What's good with YouTube? Y'all already know Big Flocka with a convict's perspective. And I'm going to smash, dash, and slide on through with that little bit of energy, man. Hope everybody's having a good Saturday, man. Please hit the like, subscribe, comment, do all those things to help support this channel. And hit that bell notification for future fire content. I had a busy night last night. Woke up a little late, but we're back at it, right? And so what I'm going to discuss today is San Quentin State Prison in the 90s, 2000s is probably the only prison with a mainline where there was no Surenos on the yard. Okay. Now, of course, they had Surenos in reception center. They were kept on Bayside back in the days. But other than that, this was a stronghold for the Norteños. It's not just a foothold. It was a stronghold. It was a place that was recognized as by higher authorities as when information came from this facility, it was honored. Now, we know about places down south, Ironwood, Calipatria, Donovan, Chino, Lancaster. The farthest down south that Norteños really ever had was basically Tehachapi, and their numbers were very low in the 90s and 2000s, right? And Centinela, there were some homeboys that were there for about maybe 6 months for a while. They got to about 60 Norteños before it kicked off. But besides that, man, there were so many prisons that we couldn't walk that when we touched down the yard, either they were trying to oppress people and tell people, hey, you have to put on your shirt, you have to cut your hair. And anybody that did that, they were no good. They were not active or any, period. Anybody that decided to pick up the Bible, play that Christian role, or try to do this and that, and put on their shirt and conform to oppressive tactics by the Southsiders or MA, they were not homeboys. They were not in good standing. So anybody that says, yeah, the Northerners were doing that, they weren't Northerners then. You know what I'm saying? We were supposed to go to yards, and if we were told at all to put on our shirts or cut our hair, we were supposed to get off. Point simple. You know what I'm saying? And there were some prisons that were like that. There's some prisons even up north that were pretty bad for us, like Jamestown, where the Northerners that were on the yard were no good. So when they got to the yard, a lot of times the classification was having other Northerners try to feed for information, and they would sit there and pick and choose who would be allowed to go to the yard, who wouldn't. It's crazy. It was crazy like that back then, man. But so back to San Quentin. This prison was a Norteño stronghold. How? I think because of it becoming a reception center, and be it that this is the 90s and the Norteños were the more dominant group out there on the streets as far as in the gang world, it was easy for them to become a force to reckon with. There was a lot of individuals that came out of San Jose, Salinas, all those areas that had to go through San Quentin. Therefore, a lot of dudes that hold higher authority positions today, bros and C's, were there in the 90s, and they pretty much established it. So if you went to North Block or H Unit, you weren't going to run into no Southsiders. You may run into a BB. You may run into, some Kumis or some Jamas or some other dudes, but you were not going to run into no Surenos. And this is the one prison to where we had complete control of the main lines. And it's an interesting prison because you have death row there too. So you do have some Southsiders, you do have some ABs, and on the death row side, but they're not a factor out there in the main line or the reception side. Right? San Quentin is, like I said, it was a one prison to where not only do we have control, but we also had good reports with some of the correctional staff there. They would do favors for us, man. We were getting tobacco from death row. I mean, we had cops that were going over there to East Block, picking up pouches and bringing them to us and putting them in our cell. Running hygiene, running kites, believe it or not. Because a lot of them grew up there in the Bay Area, around homeboys. So therefore, they seen the get down. They were in school. A lot of their family members or homeboys were Norteños. So therefore, it was easy not to be targeted by them. Now they're going to do what they had to do because at the end of the day, it is their job. But other than that, it was pretty easy for us, man, compared to a lot of other prisons. Like DVI, we didn't really have it too good. Even though that was another established foothold. But there were Southsiders on the yard still. And see, there's only been one other prison or one other yard, I'll say, that there was no Southsiders really walking it, and that was the Solano 2 yard in the 90s. And it was a level 3 yard, but it was on the 2 yard. And they wouldn't let the Surenos get past 10. As soon as the busload of Southsiders came, they would send a squad of homeboys to move on them. And they kept the ones that were there were mainly either old timers, dope fiends, or Christians. Therefore, they weren't deemed a threat. So that's the only other prison that I can honestly sit there and say that, hey, you know what? We not the prison, the yard. It was pretty much a Norteño stronghold on that 2 yard. Other than that, everywhere I've been, you know what I'm saying? I've been in the shoes, I've been to other prisons, and every time I went anywhere, we were never like we were always the least amount in numbers. So San Quentin was the one place that, you know what, you knew that was a Norteño stronghold. Then we're going to send no Southsiders. You know what I'm saying? If there was anybody out there that was even suspected of being a Southsider, right, they would get moved on. And now I heard that the yard is back to being active again. I'm not too sure if that's 100% accurate. It was deemed a non-designated yard, but I heard recently that a lot of the dudes that were on the SNY side pretty much got removed from that yard. I don't know how accurate that is, but that's the rumor that I've been hearing. So San Quentin has a lot of tradition, man, a lot of fucking roots, man. That 6 yard, man, it created a lot of individuals as far as who later became, leaders within the movement, Cardenales and whatnot. And it was an experience that I got to experience at such a young age, man, and be out there with so many solid bros and righteous hermanos. Like, this is when the Nuestra Raza was the label that was being pushed. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of Cardenales as well. This is a time era when everybody had to stand in formation. You know what I'm saying? To where everybody had to partake. It didn't matter if you were fucking an NF member or a fucking Northerner. You were gonna fucking participate. And I think that allowed having that type of leadership always pass through there. San Jose, Salinas, Watsonville, all these San Fran, right? There was always someone there that had the proper schooling. There was always a lot of hermanos. And see, what would happen is we'd have people come into the hole. Back then, you come to the hole and you can go to group yard still. They changed it about 4 years later after I came to the system. So a lot of homeboys were getting laced up. They're getting gamed up about how to make weapons, how to establish a yard, about the bonds and about the formats. And all this translated to individuals going out there being assets to the movement, being assets to the yard. Therefore, San Quentin, there was no way anybody was going to be able to infiltrate it. You know what I'm saying? The only way the Norteños were going to lose that yard is if they were going to change policies and procedures, which they did. Other than that, I think since as far back as 92, I think that was the last time that there was any Southsiders on the Mainline. I think that was in North Block. After that, they were removed. I think there was an incident that actually occurred in the shower. And there's been other incidents that have happened over there. They've gone at it with the Kumis before. On the reception side, the Cocoa County Wood Car was getting it bad from the homeboys for a minute. But other than that, there wasn't too many adversaries that we were really worried about there. If you came and you had any type of markings as you were an NLR or so, you were getting moved on. And a lot of times we would make that call just based upon the fact that our security comes first and foremost. Whether it was actually accurate or legit account that this dude is what we think he is, it didn't matter. He had to go. And that used to happen all the time. And I went through Tracy. Like I said, I ran Tracy. I had experience to hold leadership positions at both prisons, Tracy and San Quentin. And San Quentin was probably one of the more easy transitions as far as to run that prison. We had it all sewed up. DVI was a little bit more different. You know what I'm saying? You had tons of Bloods, you had fucking Crips, you had Bay Area Cats, you had Norteños, and then the Mainlines too. There was a lot of Southsiders in the Mainlines. You know what I'm saying? At one time, Tracy in the early 90s had a lot of Bulldogs too as well, man. People forget about that, man. Okay, but yeah, this is what made San Quentin what it was I think a lot of it had to do with those that were coming through reception, were traditional, strong Norteño establishments, and they bred a lot of solid individuals. Like Salinas is known for breeding, like I always joke around, Their first words is the first bonds. Bond number one is the first word that they'll ever say. Tulare County, same thing. But you have San Jose as well. They're pretty laced as well. And, and all these other cities in between, as opposed to Tracy is a little bit different. You have a whole lot of different groups there. It's more of a melting pot. You got Stockton, you got Sakurai, you got Modesto, and you got Merced. But, those areas surrounding that are less homeboy inclined, if you get what I'm saying. Not as many Norteños in those areas. There's some, but not near the numbers you'll have in San Jose, Oakland, San Fran, Salinas, Watsonville, South Monterey County, Gilroy, all these areas, man. So I think that's why San Quentin was able to pretty much maintain itself as a stronghold, Anyways, this is just a quick spill, man. My experience there was like shocking. Like, I kind of tricked when I was as a kid. I was like, man, this is the only prison we have up north where there's no Southsiders, because everywhere I went, shit, I'd be in a pod. There'd be like fucking one pod. There'd be about 12, 14 Southsiders. I'd be the only Norteño in the pod. It was like that almost everywhere I went. I shit you not, man. Calipatria, homeboys were getting sent to Calipatria. They were coming back with fucking straight fucking bullet hole. I mean, straight holes in them, stab wounds. You know what I'm saying? Getting moved on quick. And up north, besides San Quentin and the Solano 2-yard, we gave them the opportunity to coexist with us. And I used to kind of trip on that. I'm like, well, we get sent down south, they whack us, but they get sent up north, and as long as they respect us and everything, they're allowed to program. It was kind of hard for me as a youngster, to really make sense of that back then. That was really something I honestly felt like, well, why when we get sent down south, why are we getting told that we have to put our shirts on and cut our hair, and what I'm saying? And we're getting moved on. And what the homeboy told me is that just because they use tactics such as oppression and numbers doesn't mean that we're going to use those same tactics. He goes, and that kind of made sense.